Hey, that's pretty damn good. 116 to 109. The Raptors defeat the Houston Rockets. They're now 7-5 on the season, 2-1 without Pascal Siakam. Very impressive. And in a game actually where they lose Precious Achiuwa, who did sprain his right ankle. There's no more info on it as of yet. We just know that he sprained his right ankle and was not able to return. This is the Raptors Reaction Podcast. I'm Samson Folk. This game is told through 3 stars, I think. Of course, everything is done piecemeal in the NBA. It's never just one guy. It's never just 3 guys, truthfully. But when we look at how effective Otto Porter Jr. was off the bench, even Thaddeus Young to some degree, because he was able to settle the offense. They ran a lot of stuff through him that allowed Fred to work off ball. But the 2 biggest motivators, I would say, was Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby. Fred VanVleet, mostly because of his pull-up shot making. That was massive in this game. The catch and shoot stuff was, of course, good too. But his defense as well, an absolute pest at the point of attack. It took him a little while to get into the swing of things, but once he was there, especially in that third quarter, he was there. And OG Anunoby, a guy who it never takes him any time to get into the swing of things. He has been swinging, I would say. Fred, a guy who may challenge for an all-defense spot, has been doing so for a couple of years now, never getting the nod. OG, it looks like, will not only challenge for an all-defense spot, but will challenge for Defensive Player of the Year. He's been that good. The piece I'm writing, if you go to raptorsrepublic.com tomorrow, or if you're listening to this the day after, will be on how Fred and OG don't let other teams dribble, and what a tremendous exercise in defense that is. But 116 to 109, the Raptors, they struggled during some parts in this game. The half-court offense had its lulls. The defense had its mistakes. Especially to start the game, everybody was prone to them. A lot of good shots were allowed to the Houston Rockets. Luckily for the Raptors, even as they were still allowing some of those good shots, the shooting ran out a little bit for the Rockets. And then from there, the Raptors in the second half, especially, were able to batten down the hatches. I think I muffed that one up last podcast. I didn't say it properly. Batten down the hatches is definitely what it is. They were able to batten down the hatches. And a really not overly impressive win because it's the Rockets. This is they're what 1-11 now, 1-10. This is one of the worst teams in the NBA. But you're without Pascal Siakam, and Pascal is an MVP level player. That's who left the lineup. And the Raptors are dealing with, a team that is trying to find not their identity because they know what they want to do. They know how they want to play, but they're trying to find how to imprint that on every single team that walks into their building or vice versa. It's tough to control pace or style, to dictate that every game in and out. But the Raptors in this game found enough of it for long enough stretches that they ended up winning. Okay, so let's talk Helio Fred at least a little bit. Helio is it's like a term for revolving around the sun. And so in this way, it's kind of been adopted by basketball people. They say like a helio offense or heliocentric offense is one that revolves around one player. And Fred VanVleet made everything go for the Raptors in this one. Even when it was Thad Young and they were throwing in, operating off the elbow for him, running some split actions, or as Lewis illuminated me to, some of these shake actions and stuff like that. It's nice to see that Fred can work off ball, but there's still the main motivator of them succeeding on these plays is either Fred's gravity or his shot making. And of course, those are intertwined. And early on in the game, it actually wasn't that much shot making, but it was kind of getting downhill a little bit, spraying the ball out, and OG Anunoby cashing 3 of his 4 triples in this game in the first quarter and doing it very quickly. That was what mostly helped the Raptors keep pace with the Rockets in this one, because the Rockets, for what it's worth, against Koloko, some of those screening actions, they were getting downhill often enough. Şengün was getting post touches, either, mid post, elbow area, and he was getting low enough against Koloko to cause problems. Koloko, he played his minutes in this one. He racked up 5 fouls pretty quickly, left the game, and didn't come back in the second half, I believe. And he had a tough time in this game, and that's not such a bad thing. I mean, quite a few of the bigs had a tough time in this game. Chris Boucher wasn't as good as he usually is. Precious Achiuwa, despite before, spraining his ankle and sprinkling in quite a few plays that other guys on the roster can't make. Also had turnovers that were you just can't have those turnovers. Like he gets an offensive rebound and tries to shovel out to the perimeter, it gets stolen, something like that. He gets to about, 11 to 9 feet, and you can see he's kind of contemplating, do I go for the push shot? And he hit the yes button on that probably too many times tonight. Stuff like that. But he also had quite a few really impressive defensive plays, especially in that third quarter. And the Raptors, despite having a bad end to their zone possessions when after Precious got injured, he at the bottom of their zone was actually made it tenable. He was quite good at the bottom of the zone in that third quarter. So it was a mixed bag for a lot of the guys. And, Koloko didn't have a good game for his relative to what people might expect. Precious didn't either. Hopefully he comes back soon. Chris Boucher, not his best game. Thad, quite good. It was a very muted game. Like Thad, was it 2 for 7 from the field? Sorry, that's Delano. 0 for 3. Yeah, what? Yeah, I was thinking Thad didn't make any shots. 0 for 3 from the field for Thad. However, he had 2 assists. I can't imagine how many of those assists, if you were kind of crediting, like, who helped the play develop when he was on ball, that helped a lot. So, yeah, that was nice to see. And that was really towards the back end of the game that he helped that out. But the Raptors, how they got back into this one, as I said, battening down the hatches defensively naturally, but also getting some missed shots that were helpful and then kind of emboldening their response. Koloko not playing as much anymore allowed them to be a little bit more aggressive at the point of attack. And what I mean by that is Koloko, he's not often switching. He's not often doing hedge and recover. And with guys like Kevin Porter Jr. or Jalen Green, if you try and just stick those guys straight up or allow them to get downhill and to drop with a guy who's, Shangoon, maybe rolling to the basket or whatever, Jabari Smith popping out, it just creates these man advantages that the Raptors had a tough time with. And there were a lot of breakdowns from that point. And some of that is also on the point of attack defense too. OG, for what it's worth, not just a shooter in this game. He hit 10 shots, quite a few of them operating off of that pump and go or shoot it, that dichotomy, right? We're looking at a guy who's in this game mostly operating between two things that he wanted to do with a little bit of creation peppered in. And of course, he's always able to. We don't typically consider this creation because it's not half court, but he had 3 steals again. They ran out on, I think, every single one of them and scored. It's really meaningful when because OG is getting those steals. It always seems like he's coming up court with the ball. He's always jump starting transition. And whether he's taking it all the way there by himself, because he can take like that strip attempt in the half court, a lot of time it works. But in I think on the fast break, when he has the handle, he's been pretty good at shielding the ball and then finishing 2 long steps and finishing up top and stuff like that. It's just so nice to see that his defense leads to offense. That's a form of creation. It's not something that when you go down to the half court, you get to toss the ball to OG and say, give us something, give us a bucket. But it is a form of creation that he's bringing. Those are unassisted baskets, if you know what I mean. And it was just really nice to see OG. That pump and go stuff is so effective. That's what, you go on to raptorsrepublic.com tomorrow. That's what Louis Atzman's piece is going to be about, OG Anunoby and driving. So stay tuned for that. It'll be illuminating, I'm sure. But it was just really nice to see OG capture so much of what makes him valuable offensively. Of course, when things bog down, you want to rely on a little bit of that creation. And he's been fledgling in some areas of creation. I know a lot of people, the isolations are a sticking point they don't want to see. And fair enough, because he's been quite bad at isolating. And he wasn't good at it in this game. He had a couple possessions that didn't go well. But he's clearly allowed and being given some room to stretch his legs to try things out. And whether it's a second side pick and roll or coming off a dribble handoff, these in motion things, I think it's been pretty good. And so him putting up 27 on 20 shots and playing, defensive player of the year caliber defense, it's just so good. These are star performances. He's been so damn good this year, and tonight was just another level of that. It's just a guy who's so tremendous and finding his way to get his own offense with his defense, being really good at moving off ball and waiting to form up off of these drives and putting himself in a position where you hit the shots early, you get the closeouts late, you get downhill all game, all that kind of stuff. It was just great to watch OG work in this one, and Fred as well, helping carry the offensive load in this game. That was tremendous to see. As I said, Thad popping in on that one. Scottie and Gary. Scottie, I really like some of those possessions where it's getting the catch and turning really quickly. It's like he catches with his left. He's on the, I guess, the technically the right block, right? And he catches and he turns over that inside shoulder on these smaller players or maybe a similarly sized player. And his steps are so long. Like the one time he cleared all the way to the opposite side of the basket, finished with an uncontested left-handed layup. Beautiful. Sometimes he's getting to about 4 feet, turning, facing a contest where a guy's right there, but Scottie's long. He's comfortable with contact. He's trying to, do the Statue of Liberty over guys, not a dunk necessarily, but a touch shot. Those don't always go in, but it's definitely a reputable, worthwhile attempt at self creation. I love when he takes those shots. It's much better than when he kind of faces up and gets into all these dribble combos, which just because I don't particularly like it and it's not efficient currently, doesn't mean it's not worthwhile for him to get those reps in, by the way. He's had some success with it this year, but that was really nice to see. I think that we can continue to expect interesting developments for Scottie offensively. It's impossible to tell where he's going to step to next as far as what developments he makes. He's kind of, dipping his toes in a lot of areas. We'll see which one pops off, if any, if he's a, jack of all trades, master of none, if he's going to be a master of three, four, whatever. And the 5 assists tonight were quite good too. It's just, he sees the floor in a special way. And while he's not able to create advantage as much as he would like, as much as the team would currently like, based on how many possessions they're giving him to do so, he's still getting some possessions where he sees a pass or makes a read that other people just can't make. And that's really, really tremendous for Scottie. So a quieter game, defensively, a pretty poor game for Scottie as well. Bit off more than he could chew at the point of attack quite often, I think. And there were a few times where he's the low guy in these two-man actions in the pick and roll stuff. He's guarding the handler. He has to be at the level of the screen or maybe even hedging, but he's just not competitive, putting a body on the guys trying to turn the corner or pressing them at the rim. They're getting to where they want. He I thought had a good defensive start to this season. The past few games has been ho hum. That probably has to do with a little bit of a changed role with Pascal out. Scottie's being asked to do a little bit more. Uh, you see it in this defense how much Pascal is asked to do, and it's tough to replicate that. And Scottie doesn't have the court coverage or awareness to really weaponize his athleticism and his length at the level that Pascal does yet. And he's not as quick sticking with guards either. But it's something that's developing. It's something worth paying attention to. But I leave this game after watching Scottie not higher or lower on him, but just looking at a guy working on his craft, and that's how I feel about him after this one for sure. Gary with another multi-assist game, something interesting to track in this. I'll certainly write a piece about it and kind of what types of passes he's making because he doesn't pass very often. That's not really Gary's MO. When the ball reaches his hands, typically it's gonna stay there. He's gonna try because he's like that's the thing, right? The ball comes to Gary. If you're as good a shooter as Gary Trent Jr. is, especially off the dribble, contested too, right? How is a guy ever gonna make you feel like you can't get your shot off, or that they're gonna put you in a situation where you feel like you can't make the shot you're about to take? Precious Achiuwa, a guy like Precious is a guy who wants so much for his offense. We know this much. But if Precious is at 17 feet and he's got like 18 seconds on the shot clock and he's dribbling to his left, is he gonna like step back to 19 and try and shoot a mid-range jumper? I haven't seen one of those this year from him. We've seen quite a few from Gary, and that's because Gary knows, like, hey, I can make these sometimes. A quiet game for Gary, but it was cool to see that back to the passes part of it, that he's being a little bit more deliberate with some of his playmaking. He's using his gravity as a shooter to pull guys a little bit and recognizing what that means for him as a passer, what it means for the lanes that open up for his teammates. A bit more heady in that area is really appreciated from Gary Trent Jr. and even got to the rim a couple times in this game. And that's really, really nice to see. He had tough shots in this one, Nothing really came easy. He didn't end up being the swing guy, that side top side action that gets the ball to the other side of the court, the kick out for three. He wasn't really the guy sitting at the end of those plays, the beneficiary. He wasn't the dude. And he was used to being the dude when Pascal was on the floor. He was getting so many of those looks. It's changed, and he's doing his best to thrive within it. I come away from this game thinking Gary stayed within himself, didn't overextend, and when you can make passes, it just makes Gary way more dangerous. If the shooting and the passing coalesce and he's finding, play by play, he's making the right decisions more often, like not letting a pass go to the wayside in pursuit of shooting a difficult jump shot and not trying to sneak a pass in there that's too difficult when he has something open for him as a shooter. Like once he masters that, because he's capable of making the reads he makes are rudimentary. They're ones he should make and ones he's learning to make, and he has the capability to throw those types of passes. When they're there, he's got to make them, and we're seeing a development, an acknowledgement of his teammates when they're in open space that he's making. That's good. Okay, Otto Porter Jr., you brilliant, brilliant man. People I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this podcast also listened to my stuff over the summer when they signed Otto Porter Jr. I did a deep dive, I did a breakdown, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the biggest things about Otto Porter Jr. isn't just that shooting; it's that he's a heady, rotational defender, very much so. But he's also, over the past decade since he's come into the league, one of the most impressive rebounding wings. And for a guy who sometimes he doesn't move that well sometimes. We're seeing a guy like Sky just jump up and grab these contested boards. And maybe he's doing the early work. Like he's getting that stiff arm on a guy's hip. So they go up and they feel that restriction and then he's boom. And then he jumps and gets it. Like that sneaky veteran stuff to get the balls. But sometimes, it's about positioning. It's about that sneaky stuff. It's about getting to a ball with preparation, not just the leap. But he's really been able to help out on the glass. That was something I was really excited for because the Raptors need that. And the fact that they can pair that with a guy who shoots, a guy who defends well, and a guy who's moving well. Like he had such a good cut off the 45 when Precious was driving in transition and then he got in for a layup. And it's a really nice job of coalescing a lot of the traits that the Raptors really do like having and putting it into a wing with a jumper. And he went 2 for 5 from 3 in this one. That's gravy. He doesn't have to do anything this game as far as I'm concerned. That the 14 points, like one steal, I guess 6 boards, that moves the needle. Boy, howdy, does it ever move the needle. That's really, really impressive work from Otto Porter Jr. So I would just left really, really impressed with him. Delano, tough game for sure to some degree. The defense was hit and miss. The offense, we're waiting on the guy. He's repping it out there, and no doubt repping it in practice, no doubt repping it whenever he can, is that he's trying to get that jumper going. We know this much about him. He's not afraid to let it fly when the ball comes into his hands, and you can tell teams are like, if you don't shoot this, your team is in trouble. And when defenses play defense on you like that, when they sag that hard, you just have to put it up. And in this game, not really hitting, but he's working his way to it. He's a clever player offensively. If he gets that jumper going, it's going to unlock a lot of his reads and a lot of the other aspects of his game. And I think it's so easy to tell the way he attacks the rim, his touch, finishing, pretty special. He Everything he throws up there threatens to fall in. Truly, it does. But yeah, at the end of this game, you can just sit back and kind of marvel at OG and Fred in particular and say, wow, these guys really made it happen. They took over stretches of this game. It's really hard to lock down a perimeter defense with 2 guys, but they managed to do it. It was really impressive stuff. Like the mix of ball pressure and off-ball digs and gapping guys and just being able to get in the mixer and always be able to disrupt. How you find that balance where you're constantly applying that and you're not giving up anything, it's so impressive. That's so difficult to do as a player, and usually you need 5 guys to do it, but the Raptors defense, the 5 guys on a string thing was not happening tonight. But OG and Fred just found this incredibly important 2 guys on a string thing that they had going, especially in that 3rd quarter, where they took over the game. They changed the complexion of the game and prepared the Raptors to be able to sustain a run and get some rest, like build up that lead playing this type of way so that you can rest more and close out the game. And they did it all, man. They were fantastic in this game. I loved that performance. The Reggie Evans Award, I'm gonna have to give it to Otto Porter Jr. Big shout out to Otto Porter Jr. This was my favorite. Like that game against the Spurs, I quite liked, but also this is my favorite performance of his so far. He was great. So big shout out to Otto Porter Jr. The top quick reaction comment is loading. Discus, please. Thank you. Okay. From bherbs. We've got a lot going on here. So this is a large paragraph. Quote, I'll just leave this on my way out. There doesn't have to be some grand conspiracy. It's not the ankle. Bracket, I'm sure it's tender, but he wouldn't be playing on it if it was genuinely hurt. We all know this org errs heavily on the side of caution. Bracket, it's not some perceived beef with Nick or dejection because he plays with ball hogs. It's not a girl or Twitch or anything else. It's the wall. They all hit it. The good ones come out far better on the other side. Scottie isn't a good one. He's a great one. This is all part of the journey with young players. Don't make it out to be more than it is or has to be, and just cheer for the guy. He'll be back sooner than later. End quote. Scottie dialogue. Are people low on Scottie? I would not expect. bherbs has always been quite um a good commenter. Great comment etiquette, just talking ball as far as I have seen bherbs. I like bherbs. I haven't seen anything bad. I don't think he'd make up. So I guess people are doubting Scottie. This is this is a fan base thing. A lot of people in the fan base sold Fred up the river a few days ago. I I had many people really questioning my analysis last year when I was telling people about Pascal and saying the process is ahead of results right now. It will come. And it did. And the people who wanted to, sell Pascal for loose change and move on from him, and the people who said Pascal was infringing upon Scotty's, this, that's, yeah, fans, man, because what else are you going to be besides emotional and irrational at times? And it's, uh, it's fun to go over the edge and have big reactions, and I think that's part of it. But it's also bherbs, words of wisdom here. As you've heard on this podcast many times, is progression isn't linear. It looks different. Scottie, as I said earlier in this very episode, he's working on some things, and while progression isn't necessarily happening, the groundwork for things that come in the future is being laid right now too. He's struggling as a primary. It's tough to be a primary in the NBA, and that's certainly okay. Scottie, as bherb says, he's a great one. I have no worries about Scottie's future. He's going to be a star. That's how I feel. bherbs, thanks for writing in. Uh, yeah, thanks for hanging around Raptors Republic. Thanks for listening in or watching, whichever it is, listener, viewer. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to YouTube and like the video. That's what you're supposed to do. Go to raptorsrepublic.com and subscribe to the website. And if you're listening on the podcast, just thanks for tuning in. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.